Hey guys, this is a summary of the lesson on the change in conflict in the American West. So here are some of the things you should know. Here's the main idea of this whole thing. The main idea is that the settlement of the West brought challenges and brought opportunities to the people who went out west. And also it brought a lot of specific challenges and conflict for the natives that already lived there. So one thing you need to know about is the miners. The miners are the people that helped populate the West, and even though most of them didn't get any success when they went out west, they still helped to populate areas of California and most of the West. So one thing you need to understand is that this migration, this migratory movement of the gold rush helped to populate the West. So ranchers. Ranchers are another group of people that you should know about, and ranchers specifically followed this place called the Chisholm Trail to take most of their cattle and herd it out into the northern meatpacking places like Dodge City in Kansas. And one thing you need to understand is that this trail helped move goods, or at least transport goods, from the south to the middle of the country, the Midwest. The Transcontinental Railroad is a pretty big and important thing that you should take from this lesson, because the building of the Transcontinental Railroad, which specifically relied on government support and immigrant labor like the Chinese and like Irish people, because of this accomplishment, the United States was able to connect its transportation lines from east to west completely by the end of the 1890s. And this gave the consequence of a massive amount of wealth for the people that owned and operated the railroads, but it also brought more settlement to the West, just like the Chisholm Trail and just like the miners did. So inevitably, the people that were already living on the Great Plains, the area in the West where this settlement is happening mostly, those people fought to preserve their way of life as best as they could. But Native Americans were moved by the United States government onto these reservations, and once they were there, they were expected to abide by the rules that the government of the United States gave them. So the United States does one thing that's kind of contrary to the reservation system, and that is that it imposes this thing called the Dawes Act. And the Dawes Act takes basically land that was appropriated for reservations and takes it away from those reservations, and it asks people that are Native Americans to kind of pick: are you going to stay on a reservation, or are you going to adapt and assimilate to American culture, which means not living there anymore? This is an image from the Carlyle School in Philadelphia, where Native Americans were taken and brought to these schools where they were assimilated, or they were stripped from their culture and they were turned basically into Americans. So the Homestead Act is a pretty important thing you should know as well, because it brought farmers to the Great Plains, and specifically it brought African Americans. Because the land was available and because the land was cheap, African Americans that decided to leave the South took advantage of this offer. They called themselves Exodusters, and these Exodusters brought with them the labor force that was living normally in the South. They brought it to the West, to places like Kansas. Now, farmers out there faced a lot of challenges. Sometimes they faced really bad crop failures, really bad years where nothing would grow, and sometimes really bad plagues and pests, and sometimes even drought. So, being that farmers were experiencing so many challenges, many of them decided to form associations like the one in the picture here, the Grange, where they would collectively bargain or collectively appeal to the federal government for what they wanted. So one of the things that they wanted was they wanted more regulation of industries. That way industrialists out east would not take advantage of them. The other thing that they wanted was, for example, the coinage of silver, so that there would be more cash available to them and they could be able to pay their debts. And so this Grange movement eventually turns into what we call the Populist Party. And those are the things you should know from this lesson.